The traffic stop started with a dirty license plate. Logan Camp, a police officer in Winterset, Iowa, pulled over Ashley Mumford on March 5th, 2022, because he couldn't make out two of the numbers on her plate, explained SCOTUS of September 22nd, 2025. But once he stopped Ashley's car, the officer investigated more than her license and registration. He called in the police department's canine handler. A Roscoe, a certified drug detection dog, arrived and walked around the exterior of Mumford's car for 15 to 20 seconds. Along the passenger side, a Roscoe briefly rose on his hind legs, put his paws on the passenger door, and his nose momentarily, almost imperceptibly, crossed the plane of the open window. The dog alerted to the presence of drugs, prompting a search of Ashley's purse and car. Ultimately, she was charged with possession of methamphetamine, marijuana, and drug paraphernalia, and then later convicted. But it didn't end there. Orozco's brief sniff inside the car that night soon could be at the center of a Supreme Court case and become part of the justice's rich, long history of wrestling with the use of police dogs and their noses. The use of drug sniffing dogs to create probable cause is not new in courts across the country, however. The Guardian of May 13th, 2025 reveals that drug detection dogs only have a 30% hit rate. But police continue to use them as the primary justification to search people as well as vehicles. Therefore, we will discuss the problems associated with drug dogs, violating citizens' constitutional rights, examine the causes, and finally focus on some solutions to better understand why. The Kansas Reflector of May 31st, 2025 says Gina Wilson was stopped by police for not properly using a turn signal. The officers proceeded to call in a canine unit, Odin, a drug sniffing dog, to examine the exterior of Gina's car. She refused to consent to a search of her vehicle even after Odin alerted to the presence of drugs in her car. The officers proceeded to search the car and found a packet of oxycodone pills. She claimed that the search of the car was unconstitutional and therefore a breach of her Fourth Amendment rights. The use of drug dogs illustrates our two problems. Legality is questioned and unwarranted searches. First, for decades, American courts operated under the assumption that drug sniffing dogs were impartial, explains NPR of June 8, 2023. The Supreme Court constantly has heard cases regarding drug dogs. Starting in 1983 with the United States v. Place, the United States allowed drug sniffing dogs to be utilized without the need for a warrant. However, 6 U.S. Supreme Court cases have taken place since, and hundreds of state Supreme Court cases have been heard over the years. The use of drug dogs is constantly litigated, highlighting the fact that we simply do not know how to use drug dogs while upholding the Constitution. This puts the power of the law in the hands of a faith-based system. Second, using drug dogs can lead to undue harm by justifying intrusive and humiliating searches of innocent people. The previously cited Guardian recounts the story of Raya Meredith. After a drug-sniffing dog alerted on her at a music festival, a strip search was ordered. Meredith gave an emotional testimony about her strip search by police. During the search, Meredith, 27 at the time, was asked to remove her tampon while undressed in front of a police officer. The search found no drugs and nothing else illegal. Meredith's case is not an isolated incident. Or take the case in Aspen, Colorado, where the high schools are implementing drug dogs into the school system. Aspen Public Radio of April 18, 2024 explains that while the Fourth Amendment protects students from unreasonable searches, when a school conducts a random sweep with drug dogs, it isn't considered a search, so schools don't need probable cause or a warrant to conduct them. Consequently, this leads to unwarranted searches of students. This gives officers free rein to conduct invasive searches on children. If the Fourth Amendment means anything, it's that police can't just pull you over, interrogate you, and ransack your car without a good reason to suspect you of a crime. But that's exactly what happened to Alex Scott in 2022, explains Injustice for Justice of June 6, 2023. Alec was driving home from a work trip on I-35 near San Antonio when a Bexar County Sheriff's deputy pulled him over for allegedly drifting between lanes. After interrogating Alec for 10 minutes, the deputy called a drug dog to search his truck. The dog allegedly alerted to the presence of drugs, and police proceeded to tear apart Alec's truck. But they found nothing because there was nothing to find. This highlights two primary causes: false positives and a lack of proper training. First, there are countless cases of dogs alerting people and vehicles that lead to a false positive. In fact, Brian Johnson, an attorney in Indiana, explained in a press release on May 13, 2025, controlled testing of drug dogs showed false positives anywhere from 12.5 to 60% of the time. For instance, NPR of January 8, 2025 describes a recent Florida ruling where a dog alerted on a vehicle. The car was then searched and marijuana was found. However, drug-sniffing dogs can't discern between medical marijuana and illegal pot. So when Polo alerted on a substance, his alert alone could not provide probable cause to justify a warrantless search. And with more states legalizing marijuana, it no longer provides probable cause to search a vehicle. This can not only lead to a violation of rights, but also leads to cases of racial profiling as well as discriminatory practices enacted by the police. Second, drug dog training is out of date and there isn't a set standard. As the process of marijuana legalization continues across the country, issues are arising with drug sniffing dogs. It's hard to teach an old dog new tricks, but it's even harder to get an old dog to forget old tricks. Once a dog is trained to alert for marijuana, there is no reliable way to train them not to do so. While heavily suggested, it is not federally required for drug dogs to change from weed to non-weed when laws change. In one community, Whitehall, Ohio, the police continued to use weed-sniffing dogs for 8 months after marijuana was legalized. Furthermore, there is no widely recognized standard for training for drug-sniffing dogs. According to Criminal Legal News of July 15, 2023, currently competing certifying organizations such as the National Narcotic Dog Association and the National Tactical Police Dog Association uh, sell certifications upon their own standards. This approaches the status of junk science. Add to this the fact that dog handlers have been convicted for falsifying evidence and are resistant towards training their dogs to ignore handler cues and biases, and one can only conclude that drug detection dogs and their handlers need national training certification standards, independent of organizations that have monetary interest in making sure the dog is certified. The Fourth Amendment is crucial for protecting not only your privacy, but also protecting you from predatory law enforcement procedures. We must take steps to resolve this issue by reevaluating the drug dog training process as well as personal solutions. First, drug dogs should stop being trained on marijuana. 40 out of the 50 states have made medical marijuana legal. We must stop the training of drug dogs on marijuana and push out any marijuana trained dogs out of their current positions. The state of Ohio has introduced a bill to retire the 400 dogs trained on to detect marijuana. Other states must introduce bills such as this one. On my QR code, you will find a link to this legislation. It is time that states take steps to protect people. Additionally, on a more local level, please go to your city council meetings and bring up this issue. Ask for your police force to routinely audit their false positives. Both the NNDDA and the NTPDA require a 90% efficiency rate for annual certifications. These dogs know how to do their job. We must force transparency of false positives in drug dogs for these dogs to be used correctly by their handlers. Push for dog certifications to be taken away if a single dog goes below this 90%. We cannot let the mishandling of drug dogs be the thing that takes away one of the things the government promises us: our privacy. So, today we talked about the problems, causes, and solutions for the violation drug dogs have on our Fourth Amendment rights. There is no such thing as a bad dog, but there are bad handlers. It's important to know that so you can protect yourself. Oh, I'm just going to make sure. Yeah, there you go.